So great to be here today. I am Cosima and I recently joined Foodspring as the CRM team lead. So I've only been with the company for, in fact, less than 2 months, but it's great to be here already. And my background is quite diverse. Before Foodspring, I was working for Volvo Cars, so quite a different industry. And before that, I was working in gaming. So the biggest game I've worked for is Candy Crush, which is quite popular. You may have heard of that one. So this is actually, in all my time working with CRM, this is the first time I have worked on direct mail as a channel. So I think it's really exciting to talk to you all today because it's also a very sort of new experience for myself. And I would really love to discuss that sort of how I found this channel for the first time, really, because I've never used it before. And I was just amazed at the impact and the potential it has. So yeah, I think really excited to be here today.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, my name's Rob Rebhol, the Managing Director at optilyz. I have the pleasure of working with customers on our, on the customer side. We work with around 300 companies across all sectors across Europe. And at the same time, I have a very strong link to our technology partners because of course, everything that we do is also dependent on other marketing automation technologies. We'll dive into that a little bit later on. But before that happens, Cosima, please give us a quick intro into what Foodspring is all about and why I like that company so much.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think this slide sums it up well, but at Foodspring, we specialize in offering basically the highest quality of fitness foods and to really bring these into the mainstream so that everyone can benefit in improving their health. So we've taken traditional sports foods typically associated with bodybuilders, so protein powders, meal replacement, high quality vitamins, and we've created the most nutritionally optimal versions of these, combined with also very nice flavors, because often these foods tend to be maybe a bit bland and not so tasty, which is quite different, I'd say. So it's definitely a growing area, and I think we're definitely at the forefront of that. So our mission is really to enable our customers to maximize their health. That's our number one aim. And as you've mentioned here, we're now part of Mars Edge, so that's like the more health-focused part of our favorite chocolate company, which also owns a lot more brands than I was aware of before I joined. So it's really, really exciting time to be part of the Foodspring family.
Yeah, it's a very interesting setup. On one hand, very startup, agile kind of mindset, and then sort of a big conglomerate, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have the best of both worlds, and there's definitely a big startup culture. We're quite small, but we're also, as you say, quite agile and quite fast. And I think it's just going to be really interesting to see where it goes now with the acquisition.
Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah. So. Again, why do we talk about an old school channel today? Like you said, Cosima, it's a new channel to you. It was a new channel when we started working with Foodspring to them. Why talk about this channel for online driven businesses when everything seems to be moving online? It's pretty straightforward. It's a channel that works. So I think like every channel out there is no perfect there's no perfect channel. The beauty of this channel, besides the fact that one needs to say that's an expensive channel compared to maybe certain online offerings or email, etc. But you don't need an opt-in to target your customers with this channel, and it's a very high conversion rate, channel, or it generates very high conversion rates because people, they get a letter, a self-mailer, or a postcard and a mail, they keep it at home, they convert whenever the need arises, they take it more seriously. So that's really what drives the appeal, I would say, of the channel. But there's a big problem. it hasn't changed much. So if you look at direct mail as a channel, very often it's still run like in the 90s. There's lots of work in making, setting up campaigns. There's CSV files that are moved from A to B. It's still not, or it's still very far away from how modern marketers want to run channels, or want to integrate their channels into their broader marketing mix. And that's where we come into the game as a company. I will keep this very short, but to sum it up, we're a tool for this channel. So we enable companies via the optilyz tool to automate, personalize the channel to quite an extent. This goes as far as hyper personalization, product recommendations on automated mailings. And we enable companies to better integrate the channel into their cross-channel marketing. This is basically done by activating us or adding us to your marketing tech stack, or activating us in a tool like Salesforce, Emasa, etc., and hereby being more agile, customer-centric. And I think that's also the great headline under which we're presenting today. So without further talk about what optilyz is all about, maybe let's dive into the more foodspring related topics. So I think the cool thing, Cosima, what you have done, you guys have done, you do have a marketing automation environment, and you added us via the API, and like that you can run campaigns that you're triggering, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So this slide more or less sums it up. So how it works today is that we, in CRM, we would provide the data, clean it, segment it, and upload it into our CRM, which then feeds directly into optilyz, and then of course it gets printed and distributed. We're not yet, as you know, doing automation, but that is very much something we are exploring our end. We just we need to work a bit on that, technically speaking, but I think that's definitely the next step, and that's where we really want to go, because we found that doing a lot of one-off campaigns, it's been very, very good for us, but it's also takes up a lot of internal resources, and it's not kind of, for us as a small company, it's not really scalable to do a lot of one-off campaigns. So that's definitely where I see us going with this.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point also. Like this, of course, this looks all very neat and clean, but the reality is, I think, more gritty. There's coordination, etc., that takes place, and we're talking about a very complex channel where, and we'll dive into that later on, the print network or printing internationally or running campaigns internationally. There is, it's not trivial. It's something that requires a lot of thought, especially also with the budgets that go into this.
Really?
Yeah. So now the big question, so what have we done, or what has foodspring done? I think I think what I always liked about working with you guys, I think from the very beginning, you're very much focused on being customer centric, thinking about what do our customers want, and it wasn't as much, you didn't have the old school mindset that I think it can exist in that industry, where what you do is you go in, you're like, hey, how can I, run the cheapest campaign at, when we look at print costs, like maximum volume, and bombard everybody with the same stuff, and that's it. And I do that a couple of times a year. But what really caught me with foodspring, and why I think it's nice that you're presenting, is that it was always about being customer centric and taking all those little steps to achieve that, to think about where are my customers, what can I do, and that's what we're going to dive into now. So the first step, from my point of view, and I mentioned this when I talked about seasonal or big batch campaigns, is to think about use cases. What we've seen is that this whole channel is evolving, and what's really important to say is that there is use cases for batch campaigns. If you have a seasonal product, and Cosima, you can probably also talk about the seasonality in your offerings, but other than that, what we see is that companies are really moving towards a direction where they think about event-based triggers and how to use this channel at these touch points. The event today is organized by Zenloop, an NPS software. So what do we see there? For example, there is companies that get NPS feedback from customers. They ask certain customers, hey, would you recommend us? They get a 9 or 10 as a score. And then what do you do with that? Well, what you can do with that, you can actually send people a letter and tell them, here you go. You said you would recommend me to your friends. Now you can do it. So that's all the stuff that we see evolving. But I think the interesting topic is like, how did you start out, Cosima, in terms of use cases? And maybe also what would be interesting is perspective. What kind of use cases do you get most excited about going forward?
Absolutely. So, I mean, right now, we mainly use this channel for reactivation. So that's as you say, in terms of seasonality, we found it was very effective to, particularly sort of in the summer. We also run campaigns in the winter too. So to really use this to drive sales and bring awareness when we might be going through a slightly sort of lower period. So it's been very, very effective for that, and also for launches. So we had a new product launch, and that was extremely successful. And so what we think is that going forward, we want to, of course, automate reactivation a bit more, because it doesn't make sense, as discussed, to do a series of kind of one-off campaigns. But we really want to explore this, the full sort of life cycle. So what really excites me would be to really try and drive sort of earlier customer retention through direct mail. And I also see this as, of course, a very good channel for targeting customers who we don't have permission to send newsletters to. So CRM is, of course, we're an e-commerce company, so CRM is a very important channel for us, but not everyone does give permission, unfortunately. So I do see it definitely really helping us through every sort of part of the life cycle, especially when we can't contact customers otherwise. And so I think that's going to be very, very exciting to begin with. At least it would be to look into earlier retention, of course, reactivation, and I think churn prevention will also be very powerful for us too.
It's I think that's you mentioned a couple of interesting points. What we said, you want to go in earlier, right? So I think that's something that we see a lot in e-commerce, that you generate first-time buyers, you spend quite some money, and then the question arises, how do I keep them on board? How do I push them into a second purchase?
Absolutely.
So, so this is the first step, right? We started thinking about use cases. So that's something that is key to being customer centric. Next topic, I think, is really the question of format. So what we see in the overall in this industry historically, you had agencies, etc., run these campaigns, set them up. So there was a lot of focus on the fanciest formats possible, right? So it was like special formats, special envelopes. Of course, catalogs are something that were highly in use. We, for example, work with a lot of former or mail order businesses that are very catalog driven, that are now moving away from that, and we see how the formats evolve. So what's interesting, I think, Cosima, you've run certain tests, or you're still in the process of figuring out your formats. What I can say from our point of view is that I don't think there is a perfect format. So there is studies out there that say, like, letters are the perfect format, or self-mailers. I disagree with that. So what we see in our data, and we have the data of around 300 companies, is that it really depends on your industry, it depends on the use case and on your audiences. And that's how you figure out the perfect format or the best converting format to get in touch with your customers. So for example, when we talk about customers that are extremely keen to get, you stay in touch with you. You can use a lot more open formats versus if you're targeting customers that don't remember you, you might want to go for something in an envelope. So that's something that I believe is considered a lot too straightforward. Some companies just say, hey, this is our format, this is what we're going to do because it looks best. I think from a customer point of view, that's not the way to go. So I'm excited, Cosima, that you are really all over the place in terms of figuring out the right format and A/B testing this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So that isn't something we've tried at different formats. We haven't, to my knowledge at least, we haven't tried a letter versus a postcard versus a self mailer. So I think that would be something really good for us to test. I think our rule of thumb is mainly to think about the message. So for example, the campaign on the left was when we had a new product launch and we really wanted to talk about it because it was a really big deal for us. So that worked really, really well. Very, very well indeed. And on in the middle, of course, is us more sort of, it's more of a direct sale, I suppose you might want to say. So we had a really nice image and we're really trying to work with our customers on this My New Normal. And we've been launching a lot of live workouts with some fantastic influencers. And so we wanted to promote that and also to drive customers directly to our channels, but also of course to give them a discount. So that sort of worked really, really well for that more sort of direct sale. And on the right is that's actually a test we're running right now. So we work with some fantastic influencers, and we're quite interested in understanding how would an influencer compare with just a normal kind of more product-based mailer. So that's going to be a really interesting test, like if we're putting a face onto foodspring, onto the products versus, promoting the products themselves. So with that, we, to be honest, we didn't have a specific reason for the self-mailer apart from, well, for the purposes of the test, we wanted to give a bit more exposure to the influencer.
Yeah.
So I was just going to say, I do think an ABC test would be very good for us to do next time.
Yeah, very, very interesting topics, and there's I see a lot of surprises very often when that kind of test is done. So next topic is international, right? So you are in 9 countries with foodspring, and what I always found interesting is you went international with this channel quite fast. And what I need to mention is that you are also in countries that are, from our point of view, less direct mail savvy, let's say. So what we see here is on the right is the countries in which you use the channel, and it's really interesting when I talk to you guys that for you don't see the big difference between the channels, because there is companies that have certain countries where this channel is super powerful and others where it doesn't really make as much sense. So maybe, can you give us like a broad overview of like first learnings about countries? How are you gonna handle all these international countries going forward? What's your take on this?
Yes, it's a really interesting question. I mean, for one thing, our market base isn't evenly distributed. So we have, obviously we're a German company, so we have the biggest space there, as we would expect. So we have found that overall we haven't seen sort of huge difference between sort of different countries. Of course, it performs better where we have sort of more of an audience and we're better known. But of course we're not doing acquisition as such, we're doing, as in we're sending to reactivate customers. So so far we haven't seen a huge difference. It performs quite sort of well across the board. Of course, this is something we want to test more and more, and as we ramp up our tests and our volumes and what we're sending. I think the big thing there that you've mentioned is delivery time. So if we want to use the channel, to drive sales or a campaign, and if it's quite time sensitive, then we have had to be a bit more careful with certain markets. So that would be sort of the biggest factor, I'd say.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting topic. So what we maybe adding to that is, so us as a company, we actually do have print capacities in different countries, but really the big unknown very often is delivery times. And you have certain countries, Spain and Italy, for example, that are a lot more unpredictable, right? So what we always have to keep in mind with the channel, however nice the software, however nice, even if we have an automated booking process, etc., or the campaign automation process, you still have to deliver to the end consumer. And if you have a country where those delivery times are less predictable because postal services just take longer, you may have a problem. And we have a lot of discussions. I mean, we have discussions around this, right? Think about what volumes, when does it make sense? And what we very often see is also that people pay very high markups on priority mail to solve this problem. I think ultimately it's about, there's a lot of planning involved. Once you have a running system, it can work pretty nicely, but it's definitely something, I think running this internationally is not as easy as saying, hey, I've got Germany, now I'm going to do the same in every other place that I want to use this channel in. But it's, again, like I said, it's interesting. Very often certain countries don't perform as well, at least for certain maybe industries, etc. Last topic, and this is, I would say, Cosima, this is the one that probably excites me the most. So it's really the question of what do I send to my customers, right? So traditionally you said, hey, I've got one design, everybody gets the same. And this is not just when I say traditionally, I'm not talking about 10 years ago, I'm talking about how very often this channel is still run. What we still see is that companies run this channel, and because there's effort involved, as opposed to other channels, even fashion companies, really big fashion companies, for example, that still send the same visuals to men and women. And even if they differentiate between men and women, then that's it. And what I think is really nice about foodspring is that you have a quite nice, there's a lot of thoughts around buyer personas and the question how these buyer personas can be targeted. The example I have right here is this postcard where there was 4 personas, but there was campaigns where we had 8 personas that you guys targeted, and with slightly different visuals, etc. So yeah, maybe you start a bit more broadly to maybe give an overview of personas at foodspring. What does that mean, and maybe what are the thoughts for this channel?
Yeah, absolutely. So this campaign was before my time, but we ran a campaign based on these personas. So it's quite interesting the way we work. So we have this great tool on our website, which was sort of designed by or in collaboration with our expert nutritionists. So we have a lot of fantastic nutritionists who actually work in-house, and we created this tool called the Body Check, so that you can anonymously go into this tool and you can write down sort of your goals and your preferences and some information about yourself, as sort of like weight or diet and all sorts of interesting things. And then based on that, we can give you sort of a bespoke recommendation. And as a result, we also gather data to really understand our customers a bit better and understand what their goals are. For example, if they have goals if they want to aspire to build muscles or to lose weight or just in general be healthier, then of course we need to give them a different message or a different recommendation to really help them meet that goal. So this campaign was based either on the data that we've gathered based on what they've bought or what information they've freely actually given us. So we've created some personas, and as a result, we had sort of different messages, different incentives, different product recommendations that we sent to these customers. And this is definitely more the direction we want to go towards. So we want to, of course, do with more sort of automation. We want to target customers with the right message, and maybe based on what they like or what they bought, or their goals, like what can we recommend to really help them fulfill their goals, because that's really what we're here for at the end of the day. And we even offer free consultations at Foodspring. So anyone, you don't even have to be a customer, you can sign up to talk to a nutritionist for free, which I think is a really, really fantastic offering. So we really, at the end of the day, we really believe that our products will help you, and that's also why the body check is such a powerful tool, or the consultations with our nutritionists, or the free information that we give on the website. So we have also sort of a dedicated area to really help our customers and to educate them in nutrition. And I feel that direct mail is also going to be a really powerful channel for us to send these target recommendations, but also to direct customers to really educate themselves.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So maybe one question going down that path, because you could use product recommendations on direct mail, but also other channels. That's something that you're already doing, that you, for example, in other channels?
Yeah, absolutely. So of course we have, like most e-commerce websites, we have a recommendation engine for some of our emails. It's something that we want to, of course, explore more and more, and make it better. Currently with direct mail, I'd say we're not quite there yet. So in terms of the automated side, so to really find the right product for the right person, that's definitely the direction we want to move towards. But I'd say it's quite early days for us as a channel. Yeah.
I agree. I think it's a process, right? You start out, you think personas, you think automated use cases, and then you go and end up with product recommendations and that kind of stuff. So the last topic, I think, is one that is very often overlooked, especially if you have an organization where you have silos and there's less interaction. It's really a question: how do I combine campaigns? And when we talked about this, right, you also told me a bit about the stuff that you do in terms of following up direct mail, because there's different approaches, right? There's how to use the channel at what point in time in the customer journey. So yeah, maybe you can give a little overview of your learnings there, and how you deploy or combine especially email and direct mail.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we found, of course, is that, I think I mentioned earlier, that of course we don't have permission to email all our customers, but when we do run direct mails, we don't just target customers without an email consent, for example. We also target customers who do have an email consent, because what we found can work really well is if you send over a postcard or a letter, and then customers might forget about it, as we often do. You pick it up, throw it in the trash or whatever. And so we found that actually, if we follow up with our customers and send them teasers or reminders that they have this voucher, and we try and also make this relevant. So if we have a new launch, in the meantime, then we can sort of remind customers and say, remember, you have this voucher, you can try this new product with it. And we found that every single time we've sent this sort of reminder, every single time consistently, we've had a really good uplift. So I think that's a really nice example of how this multi-channel approach can work really, really well. And so I definitely see us continuing with that, of course, to make it more automated. We also, in terms of other channels, I mean, it's not something we have explored too much. I think what we'd be really interested in doing might be to of course explore maybe QR codes in direct mails, and to try and direct the traffic to the website, maybe we've had discussions about possibly trying to even get subscriptions from direct mail, which would be, I think, really interesting to test. I think QR codes with the current situation is also... Sorry about that. I forgot to turn off my notifications. So I was saying that, yeah, so I think it's going to be a really interesting space as well for us to explore. How can we drive traffic directly? I was saying with current situation, I think QR codes are becoming more and more popular. So we're quite interested in exploring that for sure. We're also, of course, with the recent test we did with influencers, I guess that's another offline channel that we have been trying. So that's kind of a blend of online, offline. And I think that some of the influencers will probably promote the direct mail itself on the social channels. So I think it might sort of go full circle. And yeah, absolutely. So we do see this very much as a multi-channel mix.
Yeah, it's really interesting. We see a lot of these thoughts of like, how can I take this direct mail piece? I have a voucher, but also other ways to track it, QR codes, etc., landing pages. It's something that in B2B is really a standard approach. In B2B, very often you need to do this, right? If you give out whatever credits or stuff like that, you really need this kind of tracking because you can't work with incentives as much. But we see more and more thoughts around this in B2C, and it's really interesting how to link these channels and what effects you see. Can you give us I'm not sure if you have this available, but the emails you send after send a direct mail piece, do you see different conversion rates there, or different kind of click rates, or is there anything in particular that you maybe from the top of your head know about what this channel has, or the effect of one channel on the other?
Yeah, so I mean, it performs, of course, a lot better for customers. We can email as well, because we can, of course, remind them. And with customers where we can only contact them by offline, of course, we only have that one opportunity. I'd say that what works very well would be the 24-hour notice, so that if the discount that we've offered is going to expire, then that has a really nice uplift. But I would say we do notice that I think, as I mentioned, every time we do send this kind of reminder, it has a really nice uplift. So I don't have too much to comment on that because it's been very consistent. But of course, the final push always works super well. So I'd say that it is, it is powerful to do together. I mean, you might ask the question, like, why, if you have the email address, why would you send them a direct mail? And which is a good question. But I think for us, it's also in terms of, competition, like people receive so many emails. I think it's interesting that it used to be, of course, direct mail used to be the big sort of channel, and now there's actually a lot less competition. Similar to maybe perhaps like SMS. So I think these channels kind of come in waves. Maybe TV will be the next big thing. So I was really interested to see that, to learn that direct mail works so well, because again, as I've said, I've only been in the company 2 months and I've never worked with direct mail before. It's always been email or mobile for me. So it was a really great learning.
Yeah, I think that's a nice summary. It's and ultimately, I had this discussion with somebody this morning. It's really about what works, right? And if you have an opt-in and the people convert with that email that you send, you shouldn't send them direct mail. If they don't, it may be the touch point that generates an order or ties them to your brand, creates loyalty. If you have the right content, etc. So it's really something that depends on a lot of factors.
Yeah, absolutely.
So thank you very much. That's our brief, I would say, overview of the stuff that you guys are looking into. So thanks so much for that. If there is any questions, I think we could check, but other than that, I would say people can reach out to us afterwards, right? Hope you're not. I'm not offering anything that you're not that's going to cause a lot of trouble. Yes. So yes, thanks so much. Thanks for presenting this, for being very blunt, open about the things you do, the way you're thinking about channels. Oh, there is a question I can't answer that. I'm not sure if you can.
I'm afraid it's a really good question, but it's not so much my area. So I would have to take that up with my social media team.
Yeah. I would say I hope you can recommend a solution for direct mail, but the other stuff maybe, there might be other people. So thank you so much for taking the time, and looking forward to what's next for foodspring.
Yeah, I think we have another question.
Cost implications. Do you want to dive into that?
Yeah, absolutely. So without, of course, going into specific numbers, of course, direct mail does cost a lot more than an email campaign, but in terms of revenue, we have seen consistently that it does perform. So it very much does have a good return on investment for us so far. So we definitely do see ourselves continuing, but of course it does have much higher sort of implications than other channels. So I think you have to factor that in for sure.
I think what I normally tell people, or how I would say we see the people, it's a performance channel. So I think running this channel just for branding is a waste of money. It's just too expensive. There's other ways to broadcast messages out. So I think a lot of the stuff that we talked about is also about this being a performance channel and optimizing it. And it really depends, the format, the print methods, the volume, the country. This all drives cost, and you always need to take into consideration, does it make sense for you? Is it really something that drives ROI? Because otherwise it's just not going to be fun in the long run. So it's really, I think that's something, we have a lot of discussions right now about stuff like that, Cosima, right? About the different sometimes ideas where one says, no, this doesn't make sense, the volumes, this country, etc. It's just not it. And then you need to go back. And what we've learned is that one has to be very clear and open about it, because it's very painful to set up something that sounds awesome, that works in maybe other channels, and it burns through money, and you can really burn through money with this channel if you don't.
I think the question was specifically on having 6 to 8 different personas per campaign. So I guess that question would be around printing costs. That's actually a bit before my time, so maybe even Rob, you could discuss the implications of having different creatives per campaign.
So what's interesting in the whole direct mail setting is there's 2 big drivers that enable everything that we talked about. The first driver is marketing automation, right? So companies having the tools that actually enable automated campaigns. Cosima talked about recommendation engine, all of these things are stuff that companies have that enables to do this stuff. The other big topic is, and this is now coming to the cost, is digital print has evolved over the last 3 years massively. So what we've seen, if I look back and optilyz 5 years ago, there was a lot of offset print, because that was way cheaper than digital print. And offset print is a lot more limited. You just have the same images, and if you have different images, you have setup costs, and it takes a long time. It's just expensive. Now with digital print being so powerful, you don't really have more cost for different variations. You don't have more cost if you have picture personalization, because that's what digital print is all about. So we just, in last month, we switched a few companies that sent around 10 million mailings entirely from offset to digital, because all of a sudden the cost doesn't kill you anymore. Also the quality, digital print quality was not so nice years ago, but now you don't see the difference anymore. So this is really a big driver when it comes to cost. So 8 personas, you have to set it up, you have to have the data, etc. But if you have it, cost is not really impacted. Perfect. So now finally, thank you so much, Cosima, and have a great day.
Thank you, and everyone feel free to add me in if you want to discuss this further. I'd be really happy to chat. So thank you so much for listening, and hopefully speak to you soon. Bye bye.